I was told not to say this. That is the first thing I need you to know. Not as a preamble, not as a way of making what follows sound more dramatic than it already is. I mean it literally. I was told, by the presence that stood with me on the other side of death, the presence that showed me everything I am about to share with you, that there would be a window, a specific window, and that I had to wait for it before I said a word. I have been waiting for 2 years. I am not waiting anymore. My name is Daniel Hargrove. I spent 26 years as an intelligence analyst for the Defense Intelligence Agency, stationed in Washington, specializing in Middle East regional conflict and state actor threat assessment. My entire career was built on one skill: reading the signals that precede catastrophic events, knowing the difference between noise and a trigger, knowing when a situation had crossed from volatile to irreversible. I retired at 58. 8 months after I retired, I died in my home office in Fredericksburg, Virginia, and I was shown 3 things that I have carried in silence every day since. The first of those 3 things has now happened. That is why I am here. I want to tell you who I was the night I died, because it matters. It matters because I am not someone who would have watched this kind of video. I was not a man who believed in visions. I was not a man who believed in much of anything beyond the analytical framework I had spent 3 decades building. I believed in intercepts and assessments, in probability distributions and threat matrices. I believed in the kind of truth you could document, timestamp, and classify. Everything else, the churches, the testimonies, the people who came back from near-death experiences talking about light and peace and messages from God, I had quietly filed in the category of sincere people telling stories that served a psychological function. I was not cruel about it. I was just certain. That certainty is gone. Something took it. And the thing that took it showed me what is coming instead. The night of October 14th, 2 years ago now, I was at my desk in my home office in Fredericksburg at 11:40 in the evening. The study looks out over the backyard toward the tree line, and the desk lamp was on because it is always on when I am working. I was a retired man reviewing open source intelligence summaries out of habit. You spend 26 years doing something and the habit does not retire with you. I had a cup of coffee that had gone cold to my right and a legal pad in front of me with 3 lines of handwritten notes about regional force posturing I had been tracking. I was not afraid. I was not anxious. I was an ordinary man on an ordinary Tuesday night doing what he always did. The compression behind my sternum was the first thing. I want to be precise about this because the precision matters. It was not pain the way we usually mean pain. It was more like a pressure, sudden and complete, as if the chest cavity had decided to become smaller. Then there was a sound, not external, not a noise in the room, but something interior, like a clock mechanism catching and then stopping. And then there was nothing. I was found the following morning at 6:20 by my neighbor Linda, who noticed the desk lamp still burning through the window. She called 911. The emergency medical technicians documented pulseless electrical activity. The cardiologist's report reads, estimated clinical death duration, 11 to 14 minutes. There is a discrepancy in that range. The first responder wrote 14 minutes. The cardiologist adjusted to 11 after reviewing the timeline. I have read that report many times since. I find the discrepancy meaningful in a way I could not have found meaningful before. They could not agree on how long I was gone. I can tell you it was long enough to be shown everything that matters. Let me tell you what dying actually felt like, because it was nothing like the dying I had spent my career analyzing. There was no tunnel. I had read the accounts, Moody, Grayson, all of it, after the fact, trying to find the map that matched my territory. None of them describe what I experienced. What I experienced was not movement toward something. It was an instantaneous disappearance of every boundary. Not darkness first, not light first. The elimination of the concept of where. And then, before any vision, before any presence, something I can only describe as an expansion. As if what I was had been compressed by the body the way a fist compresses a handful of water, and then the fist simply opened. I knew immediately that I was not in my body. I want you to understand how I mean that. Not that I suspected it, not that it felt strange or dreamlike. I knew it with the same certainty I knew my own name, except cleaner. The way you know you are cold, or the way you know a room is empty. It was a fact that presented itself without requiring any work from me. My body was on the floor of my study in Fredericksburg, Virginia, and whatever I actually was had been released from it. I was not afraid. That is also a fact. 26 years of training to function under pressure, and I can tell you that the absence of fear in that moment was not trained. It was the natural state of the thing I had become without the body. And then I understood that something was waiting for me to be still enough to receive it. What came next is the reason I am telling you this, and I need you to hear it, because I believe it was meant for you as much as it was for me. I believe it was meant for anyone who has been watching the news lately and feeling not surprised, exactly, but confirmed. Like something you already knew was being written in larger letters. Stay with me. The first thing I was given before any vision, before the presence became visible, was an understanding of what I actually was. And I need to dwell on this for a moment because it is the architecture that makes everything else possible to believe, not just to hear. In my career, we worked with signals intelligence. You receive a transmission, you decode it, you assess its content. The assessment is only as good as the quality of the signal you received, and the signal is always partial. Interference, encryption, the structural limits of the intercept platform. You work from fragments toward a picture. You make your best assessment, and you document your uncertainty. That is the honest version of intelligence work. You never have the full transmission. You have what came through. What I understood in the moment of expansion, the moment my body released me, was that everything I had ever known, every thought I had ever had, every assessment I had ever written, had been the decoded fragment, not the transmission itself. I had been receiving a partial signal my entire life. The thing that died in that study was the intercept platform. The noise stopped. And in the silence that followed, for the first time, I was the signal itself. I cannot fully communicate what that distinction means. I have been trying for 2 years and I have not found the words. What I can tell you is that the state of consciousness I was in on the other side was not an altered version of waking consciousness. It was waking consciousness finally running at full capacity. The way a piece of machinery runs when you remove the governor that was limiting its speed. Everything I had ever thought was a thought. What I experienced there was direct knowing, no intermediary, no interpretation required. This matters because of what I was shown next. I was shown it in that state, not with the partial and filtered perception of a tired man at a desk, with full consciousness, unlimited by the bandwidth constraints of a biological brain. And what I was shown was a sequence, 3 events, sequential, connected, causally linked. The first event produces the conditions for the second. The second closes the doors that the third then locks. I understood the sequence not the way I understood intelligence assessments, probabilistically, with error margins, but the way I understood that 2 plus 2 is 4. The certainty was structural, not opinion, not interpretation, fact. The first event was shown to me involving Israel. I want to be careful here, because I was told to be careful here. I was told explicitly by the presence that stood with me that describing the event with too much precision would give people a reason to dismiss it, to argue about the specific details rather than hear the central truth. So I will tell you what I was shown in terms of its nature, not its name. What I was shown was a decision made at a governmental level in Israel, involving the Northern Corridor, the border area that anyone who has been following the region knows has been a pressure point for years. The decision was not impulsive. It was the product of an accumulation of conditions that had been building for a long time. And the decision, the specific action it triggered, was the kind of action that, in intelligence terms, we used to call an activation event. Not the war itself, the thing that makes the war possible, the thing that pulls all the waiting actors into motion at the same time, each of them responding not because they planned to, but because the activation event left them no other viable option. I was shown this from above, not metaphorically. I was positioned, if positioned is a word that makes sense for a consciousness without a body, at an altitude above the region, and I could see it the way an analyst sees a map, except the map was alive. Movement, cause and effect, the branching consequences of the activation event spreading outward the way a crack spreads through glass. I watched it happen. I watched it from the moment of the decision to the first hours of its consequence, and I understood every layer of it simultaneously. The political pressures, the actors who had been waiting, the specific condition that had been waiting to be met before certain things became possible. And I knew, with the knowing that is not thinking, that I was watching something that had not yet happened at the time I was shown it, but that was already, in some sense I do not have a framework for, already determined. I came back to a body in a hospital. I came back to a cardiologist telling me I was lucky. I came back to Lucy, who works the desk at the cardiac unit, asking me if there was someone she should call, and I thought of Claire, my daughter in Denver, and I said, yes, please, and she called her. I came back to all of it. And the first thing I did when I was well enough to sit up and write was open my journal to a clean page and write down everything I had been shown. 3 events, the nature of each one, the sequence, the geographic and strategic details that I, as a former intelligence analyst, was equipped to recognize. I wrote it all down and I dated the entry, and I put the journal in my desk drawer and I told no one, because I had been told not to, not yet. The second event I was shown was what we called in my profession a cascade. I want to explain what that word means in intelligence analysis, because it is the right word for what I was shown, and I want you to understand it precisely. In conflict analysis, a cascade is not an escalation in the ordinary sense. An escalation is when a country decides to raise the temperature. A cascade is when multiple countries simultaneously discover that the window for anything other than a certain course of action has already closed. They did not choose to move. The geometry of the situation moved around them until movement was the only option left. A cascade is what happens when the first domino removes the option of holding the others upright. What I was shown as the second event was not another country deciding to go to war. It was a set of countries discovering almost simultaneously that war had already been decided for them by what the first event set in motion. And here's the thing I have thought about most in the 2 years since returning, the thing I need you to actually hear, because it is not what you would expect from a man like me standing in a place like that describing a vision like this. The cascade, this vast, destabilizing, irreversible cascade, was shown to me as a moment of revelation, not just catastrophe, a moment in which things that had been true for a very long time finally became visible. Masks fall. That is the phrase that arrived with the vision and that has stayed with me without diminishing. Masks fall. The alliances that have been concealed become visible. The betrayals that have been institutional become legible. The shape of what has actually been organizing events behind the surface of what we think we see, the real architecture of how power moves in the world, becomes impossible to hide in the moment of the cascade because the masks require stability to maintain, and the cascade removes the stability. I stood there, in that state of full consciousness I described, seeing without filters, and I watched the cascade unfold. Not with horror, I want to be honest about this, with a strange and terrible clarity. Because what the cascade showed me, once the masks fell, was not chaos underneath. It was order. A different order than the one we thought we were living in. A more honest one in a way. The terrible one, but the honest one. The real one. I was shown a specific geography within the cascade. I will not name it, but I can tell you this. It involves a valley between two mountain ranges. I have never been to that place physically. I could draw it. I drew it in my journal on October 15th, 2 years ago, at 6:47 in the morning, the day after I came back, and it is still there in Volume 1, page 3. If you were in that room with me, you could see the drawing. You could look at it and then look at the news and draw your own conclusions. That is all I will say about the geography. What I want you to take from the second event is this. If you are someone who has had the feeling that what you are seeing in the news does not add up, that the events feel connected in a way nobody is naming, you are not wrong. You are reading the early edges of the cascade. The way a trained analyst reads the first anomalies in the data stream before the pattern is visible to anyone without the background to see it. You have the background. You have just been told not to trust it. Trust it. The cascade is not random. The cascade has a shape. And the shape was shown to me from above, from a vantage point that I did not earn by any professional achievement, that was given to me in a room in Fredericksburg, Virginia, on a night I was not supposed to survive. I am giving it to you because that is why I was sent back. But the second event was not the end. And I have to tell you about the third, because the third is the one I have been sitting with longest. The third is the one that cost me something to understand. The first event is the trigger. The second event is the cascade. The third event is what we called in my career an irreversibility threshold. I need to explain that term. In conflict analysis, an irreversibility threshold is the specific moment at which no human actor, no decision maker, no negotiator, no intervention can change the outcome. Not because no one has tried, not because no one is trying, because the structural conditions of the situation have moved beyond the reach of human agency. The window is closed. You are no longer preventing something. You are managing something. The third event I was shown was the closing of the last window, not the war itself, the moment when the war becomes impossible to stop. I was shown this event differently from the first two. The first event was shown to me from above, geographically, like a map coming to life. The second event was shown to me as a spreading pattern of consequence, a cascade that moved outward like a fracture. The third event was shown to me from inside. I was placed, and I use that word deliberately because the transition was not something I chose. I was placed inside the experience of every person on the ground in the moment of the irreversibility threshold, simultaneously. Not one person, then another, all of them at once. I felt what it is to be a person who does not know what is happening. I felt what it is to be a person who does. I felt both of those experiences from inside at the same time, and the difference between them was so vast and so specific that it shook something loose in me that has never come back. The people who did not know were not stupid. They were not careless. They were living their lives in the only way available to a human being who has not been given what I was given in that room. They were doing their best with the information they had. I felt their confusion. I felt their fear. I felt the specific terror of a person who understands that something enormous is happening and has no framework for what it is. And then I felt what it is to be the other kind of person, the kind who has been paying attention, the kind who has been watching the signals and trusting the feeling that the signals are connected, the kind who, in the moment of the irreversibility threshold, does not feel surprise. They feel recognition, terrible recognition, yes, grief, yes, but not the particular devastation of a person for whom this comes out of nowhere. That difference, the difference between those two experiences, was the entire point. That was why I was shown it from inside both of them simultaneously. That was what the presence was communicating without words, in a language that was cleaner than words have ever been in my life. The point was not the catastrophe. The point was what you carry into the catastrophe. I want you to stop for a moment. I need you to actually hear what I'm about to say. Not with the part of your mind that is watching this and evaluating it, assessing my credibility, deciding whether I am genuine or performed or somewhere in between. With the part of you that already knows something is coming. The part that is known for some time. The part that has told people and watched them look at you like you were being dramatic. That part of you is correct. And what I was shown, standing outside the body on a night I was supposed to die, is that the people who arrive at that threshold are not saved from the threshold. It happens to them too. But they arrive carrying something the others do not have. They arrive with a framework for what is real, with relationships that have been tended, with words already said that needed to be said, with the understanding, not theoretical but lived, that what matters is not what you accumulate but what you transmit, what you give while you were here. The presence that stood with me during the vision said something I want to give you exactly, as close to exactly as language will allow, because I have been holding it for 2 years, and you are the person I was told to give it to. It was this. The preparation that matters is not strategic. I heard that as a man who had spent his entire career on strategic preparation. I heard it as a rebuke and then as a liberation. Not strategic, relational. Not supply chains and exit plans and contingency frameworks, though I am not telling you those are wrong. The preparation that was shown to me is the one that counts. The preparation that the presence was pointing toward when it spoke was the preparation of having said what you needed to say to the people who needed to hear it. Of having loved with enough honesty that the people in your life knew they were loved. Of having cleared the accounts that needed clearing while there was still time to clear them. That is what changes the experience of the irreversibility threshold. Not information, not positioning, love, already delivered, already real. I know how that sounds coming from a man who spent 3 decades in intelligence analysis. I know. I have sat with the strangeness of it for 2 years. I have filled 17 volumes of handwritten journals trying to integrate what I was shown with what I spent my life believing. And the integration that I have arrived at, not the comfortable one, the honest one, is this. Both are true. The events are real. The sequence is real. The trigger and the cascade and the threshold are all real, and they are all already in motion. And the only preparation that crosses from this side to whatever is on the other side is what you built while you were here, out of love, and gave away without keeping score. I did not come back to frighten you. I came back because I was shown who would be watching, and I was told they needed to hear this before the window closed further. The window is not closed yet. Here is what I want to ask of you, and I want to be specific because specific is the only kind of honest. This week, not eventually, not when things calm down, this week, I want you to do one thing, just one. Think of the person in your life to whom you owe something that cannot be paid in money or time or convenience. The person you have been meaning to call. The relationship where the important thing was never said because the ordinary days kept coming and there was always tomorrow. Reach that person this week. Not with a long prepared speech, just one honest sentence. The sentence you would say if you had been told by something you could not dismiss that the window is closing. Because you have been told that. That is what I came back to tell you. And here is the thing the vision gave me to carry alongside the weight of it. What was on the other side was not darkness. Underneath the sequence, underneath the trigger and the cascade and the threshold, was something I do not have the vocabulary for. So I will use the word the presence used. Enough. What was on the other side was enough. Enough love, enough purpose, enough meaning to make everything that is coming not the end of the story, but the passage through something the story had to pass through. Not just warning. Warning nested inside something larger. There is something you have been holding too tightly. I don't know what it is for you. For me, it was certainty. The certainty of the framework I had built over 26 years, the certainty that experiences like the one I am describing were not real. I held it until the night my heart stopped in Fredericksburg, and then the expansion happened, and the thing I had been holding with both hands dissolved, and what I found in my hands when they opened was not nothing, it was everything. Whatever you are gripping out of fear right now, the thing you are clutching because the alternative feels like free fall, I want to invite you to consider setting it down. Not permanently, just for this week. Just long enough to see what your hands could hold instead. The crossing is not free fall. What you find on the other side of releasing the thing you have been gripping is not absence. It is the full transmission, and it is worth everything the releasing costs. If what I shared today reached you, I would ask you to share it with someone who needs to hear it. And in the comments, I want to ask you one thing. Write something you want someone in your life to understand about what you just heard. Write it here first. Then go say it to them. Sometimes putting it on record is the first step toward making it real. You are watching this for a reason. I was shown the kind of person who would hear this. Someone who has been watching the signals, who has been told they were being dramatic, who has known for some time that something is being hidden. You are not being dramatic. You are paying attention. And you were always the person this was for. I came back carrying something I was told to give away. I have given it to you here. Whatever is coming, and something is coming, the sequence is already moving. I hope this reaches you in time. I was told not to say this, but the waiting is over.